The late afternoon air inside Maple Court smelled like fried oil and laundry detergent. Dana Whitaker, the property manager, held a clipboard under her arm as she walked the narrow hallway. She was tired but alert. The kind of alertness that came from years of solving other people's small emergencies. When she turned the corner toward the basement stairs, she saw him again. Caleb Ruiz, the quiet tenant from Unit 203, was pushing a metal frame down the ramp. The thing looked halfway between a bicycle and a piece of furniture. Wires and small wheels clinked softly as he moved. Dana crossed her arms. "Mr. Ruiz," she said evenly, "you can't keep equipment in the basement. The outlets down there are shared. It's a safety violation." Caleb stopped. His shirt was streaked with grease, his voice calm. "It's not equipment. It's for my son." "For your son?" Dana frowned, stepping closer. He nodded toward the strange frame. "He's been in physical therapy. This helps him practice balance." "That doesn't change the rule," she replied. The fire inspector's been warning me for weeks. One spark down there and the whole floor goes up." Caleb didn't argue. He only looked at her for a second, something steady in his eyes. "Then I'll move it out tonight. I just need to finish fixing the pedal before I pick him up." Dana marked her clipboard, pretending not to notice the exhaustion in his voice. As he walked back toward his apartment, the door swung open, revealing a fridge covered in blue sticky notes, each square filled with a careful schedule. "Breathe. Use inhaler. Read for 15 minutes. Try again tomorrow." She paused just long enough to see it before the door closed. Her phone buzzed. Another complaint from the first floor, smoke smell again. She sighed and headed down. The scent grew stronger, heavy, acrid, wrong. Then came the sound she dreaded most, the smoke alarm's dying, uneven screech. "Mrs. Green," she shouted, running toward the apartment. But before she reached the door, Caleb appeared from the stairwell holding a small red extinguisher. Without hesitation, he pulled the pin and aimed at the stove where flames curled up from a frying pan. The blast of white powder filled the air, cutting through the smoke. "Don't pour water," he shouted to the trembling old woman beside the sink. She froze, clutching her apron. In seconds, the fire was out, only the smell of burnt oil left behind. Dana coughed, waving her hand through the haze. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," she asked Mrs. Green, but Caleb was already turning toward the window, cracking it open to let the smoke escape. Then he stopped. His face changed, a sudden, sharp worry. "Milo," he muttered. "The bus drops him right now." "What's wrong?" Dana asked. "He's got asthma," Caleb said, already moving. "If he walks into this smoke..." He didn't finish. They both ran, pushing through the front door and out into the parking lot. The yellow school bus was just pulling up. A small boy with a bright helmet dangling from his backpack stepped down, smiling when he saw his father, until the wind carried the smell of burnt grease across the lot. The smile vanished. Milo coughed once, then again, the kind of cough that pulls at the ribs. Caleb was already beside him, pulling an inhaler from his pocket, steady hands guiding the boy's breath. Dana's heart thudded. "There's an urgent care 2 blocks away," she said quickly. "Honk, get in, I'll drive." "I can..." "Get in, Caleb!" He didn't argue. The car doors slammed. The smell of smoke clung to their clothes. As Dana pulled onto the street, the boys' shallow breaths filled the small space between them. Caleb's voice was low, calm, whispering comfort his son could barely hear. Outside, sirens echoed in the distance, growing softer as they turned a corner. Inside the car, the noise was smaller, the sound of a child trying to breathe and a father refusing to panic. Dana gripped the steering wheel tighter, watching the red light ahead blur into rain. She didn't know this man beyond a few complaints and a clipboard full of rules. But at that moment, she knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next was about to change everything. The drive to the clinic took less than 10 minutes, but it felt longer. Milo sat in the back seat, small and pale, clutching the helmet on his lap. Caleb kept his voice steady, counting his son's breaths under his own. Dana's hands gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale against the leather. The rain from earlier had turned into a mist, soft but cold. Inside the urgent care, the waiting room lights hummed overhead. The nurse took one look at Milo and led them to a small room without paperwork or questions. Caleb followed, crouched beside the bed as the boy's breathing eased under the hiss of a small inhaler mask. Dana stood in the doorway, feeling strangely out of place. A woman who usually fixed things by calling numbers or filling out forms, now realizing neither could help much here. When the nurse returned and said, "He's stabilizing," Caleb finally exhaled. He looked up, sweat on his temple, eyes tired but calm. "Thank you," he said quietly, like Ford driving us. Dana shook her head. You didn't give me much of a choice, she tried to joke, but her voice didn't quite land. Caleb smiled anyway, faint but grateful. By the time they left, the night had cooled. Milo was sleepy but alert, his small hand gripping his father's thumb as they walked to the car. Dana watched them from behind, a pair of silhouettes under the parking lot light. For a moment, the clipboard and rules she carried every day felt smaller than they should have. When she got home later, she opened her laptop out of habit. An email blinked from the building owner. Submit the fire report by morning, identify the source, confirm all code violations. Dana stared at the screen. The system didn't know about burnt oil or asthma attacks. It only cared about boxes checked and names written. She typed slowly, fire contained, no injuries. Then her fingers stopped at the last line, cause, negligence, or malfunction. She thought of Caleb standing in the smoke, his hands sure and his voice calm. Still, the protocol was clear. She wrote, unverified, possible misuse of basement outlets, tenant under review. The next morning, she slid the notice under Caleb's door. Inspection scheduled, possible lease violation. Her hand hesitated before letting go, but the paper was already on the floor. Later that afternoon, she saw him in the courtyard, helping Milo onto a small stool to reach the drinking fountain. Other residents glanced at them, whispering about the smoke, the basement, the extinguisher. Dana pretended not to hear. She had told herself she was just following rules. But when Caleb caught her eye, his expression wasn't angry, it was quiet, the kind of quiet that carried weight. He nodded once, polite, and walked away with his son. That night, as Dana made her rounds, she passed by his apartment again. Through the cracked window, she heard laughter, soft and short, like it belonged to a smaller world than hers. She should have felt relief that everything was fine. Instead, she felt the strange pull of guilt, the sense that she had punished the wrong thing. She turned off the hallway light, telling herself it was just another workday. But as she walked away, the sound of Milo's cough echoed faintly through the vent, and for the first time, Dana wondered if rules could ever really keep anyone safe. And then, in the silence that followed, something began to shift. A feeling she couldn't yet name, but one that would soon test everything she believed about right and wrong. The next day began like any other at Maple Court. The hum of dryers from the laundry room, the clatter of mailboxes opening, the faint smell of coffee drifting through the hallway. But for Dana, something felt off. She carried her inspection folder like a shield, trying not to think about the paper she'd slid under Caleb's door the night before. When she reached the basement, the air was cool and still. Light fell in narrow stripes through the small window, cutting across a workbench that hadn't been there last week. On it sat a toolbox, a half-finished metal frame, and a few small bolts scattered like coins. A child's drawing was taped to the wall, a stick figure on a bicycle smiling under a sun that took up half the page. Dana crouched beside the bench, tracing the edge of the metal pedal with her pen. It wasn't the mess she expected. There were no tangled wires, no scorched outlets, no evidence of recklessness. Everything was organized with quiet precision. She checked the outlet anyway. It was warm but not dangerous. Still, she wrote in her notes, electrical inspection required, unauthorized equipment present. As she turned to leave, a soft sound caught her. The creak of a door opening behind her. Caleb stepped into the light, wiping his hands on a rag. "I didn't hear you come in," he said, his tone polite but careful. "I scheduled an inspection," Dana replied, lifting her folder. "It's part of the report." He nodded once. "Of course, just tell me what I need to change." His calm made her uneasy. "You know," she said, "people are worried about what happened. Shared spaces, wiring, fire risk." "I understand," Caleb interrupted gently. "I worry too." He glanced toward the drawing on the wall. "That's why I build it right. I test every part before I plug anything in." Dana followed his gaze. "Your son drew that?" "Yeah," he said with a faint smile. "He thinks once he rides this, he'll go faster than the wind. He doesn't know yet the training wheels stay on forever." The way he said it, soft, steady, without complaint, made Dana's throat tighten. "It's impressive work," she admitted, "but you still need permission to use the basement." Caleb nodded. "I sent a request last month. No one answered." She frowned, flipping through her tablet. No record, no email, just another gap between rules and people. "I'll look into it," she said, though she wasn't sure she would. Before she left, something else on the wall caught her eye. A small photograph pinned beside the drawing. A woman with dark hair smiling, her arm around a younger Caleb holding a baby wrapped in a blue blanket. The edges were worn, as if touched too often. "She looks kind," Dana said quietly. "She was," Caleb replied. "Milo's mom." There was no bitterness in his voice, only a steady acceptance that carried its own gravity. "I'm sorry," Dana said. Don't be. She taught me everything I needed before she left, how to and how to hold a wrench, how to hold a child. The silence that followed was heavier than the hum of the old pipes. Dana wrote one more line on her clipboard without thinking. Basement space used for family therapy equipment, review pending. When she looked up again, Caleb had already gone back to work, tightening a bolt, eyes focused, shoulders relaxed. It was the posture of someone who found peace in small, careful work. She left without saying goodbye, her footsteps echoing up the stairs. Outside, sunlight washed across the cracked pavement, and for a moment she stopped to breathe. She had come down to prove a rule, instead she had found a story. And as she walked back toward her office, she realized the hardest part wasn't enforcing the policy. It was pretending it still felt right. The following morning, Maple Court buzzed with a kind of low, uneasy energy. Word of the fire had traveled faster than truth ever could. Some said a tenant had nearly burned the building down. Others said a man had been experimenting with machines in the basement. Every version of the story seemed to grow sharper by the hour. Dana heard pieces of it while making her rounds. Mrs. Green telling her neighbor how Caleb kept wires and tools where children play, another tenant warning about those makeshift gadgets. Each word felt like a pebble dropped in her shoe, small but impossible to ignore. By noon, she found herself standing in the courtyard, clipboard against her chest, listening to the hum of gossip ripple between balconies. That's when she saw Caleb again. He was kneeling by a flower bed near the walkway, tightening a loose sprinkler head while Milo chased a butterfly nearby. Mr. Ruiz, she called. She told, her tone too formal for the scene. He looked up, wiping his hands on his jeans. Morning, Ms. Whitaker. We need to talk, she said. The words came out sharper than she meant. There are complaints. People think your workshop caused the fire. Caleb's expression didn't change. Did they see me in the kitchen that night? No, but... Then they saw the smoke, he said quietly, and they needed someone to blame. His calm disarmed her again. Dana shifted her weight, trying to find steady ground. You have to understand this is about safety, not blame. The owner wants documentation, the residents need reassurance. Caleb nodded. So you'll write another report? She met his eyes. That's my job. Milo came running up just then, clutching a small flower in his fist. Look, Dad, it's the same color as the sky. Caleb smiled, kneeling to take it. That's because you picked a good one, he said, tucking the stem behind the boy's ear. Milo giggled and darted off again. Dana watched, silent. There was a softness in that moment that made her feel like an intruder. You're good with him, she said. Caleb shrugged. He's all I've got. That makes it easy to try. She wanted to say something kind, but the words tangled inside her. Instead, she handed him a printed notice. The building inspector will be here tomorrow. Please have the basement cleared by then. Caleb took the paper, reading it carefully. And if I don't? It'll be recorded as a violation. He folded the notice slowly, slipping it into his pocket. Understood. Dana turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. You know, Ms. Whitaker, he said gently, sometimes people don't fix things because they have time. They fix them because they don't. She didn't reply. The meaning sat heavy in her chest as she walked back toward the office. That afternoon, rain clouds gathered again, pressing low over the roofs. Through her window, Dana saw Caleb still outside, covering the flower bed with a plastic sheet so the soil wouldn't flood. He moved with quiet precision, the same focus she'd seen in the basement. When he finished, he looked up toward her window and gave a small nod. Not of thanks, not of defiance, just acknowledgement. She found herself nodding back before she realized it. But later, when the rain finally broke and thunder rolled through the sky, Dana caught sight of two residents pointing at Caleb's door, whispering. One of them shook his head, the other muttered, "He's trouble, you'll see." She closed the blinds, but the echo of those words followed her long after the storm began to fade. And deep down, beneath her practiced calm, Dana felt something new taking root. A quiet fear that doing the right thing might mean standing alone against everyone else. The next morning, Dana arrived early, long before most tenants stirred. The hallways were quiet except for the faint buzz of a vending machine and the hum of rainwater dripping from the roof. She told herself she was only checking on the basement before the inspector came, but the thought felt thinner every time she repeated it. As she reached the end of the hallway, she saw Caleb's door half open. Milo's small laughter echoed faintly from inside, the sound of a child practicing joy between breaths. Dana hesitated, then knocked softly. Caleb opened the door, surprised but not unfriendly. "Morning," he said, his voice low so he wouldn't wake the building. "Morning," she replied. "I just wanted to let you know the inspector's coming by at noon. I'll be there too, so you're not blindsided." He nodded, calm as ever. "Appreciate that." For a moment, neither moved. Behind him, the small apartment looked worn but alive, a stack of library books by the couch, a toy car on the floor, the faint smell of pancakes in the air. And then Dana saw it again. The fridge, covered in blue sticky notes. She stepped closer, unable to help herself. Each square carried a piece of their routine, written in neat, blocky letters. Morning inhaler, stretch, water the plant, read with Dad, and near the bottom, one note stood out. A small drawing in Milo's handwriting. Ride the big bike soon.
Dana smiled faintly. You two are organized.
Caleb followed her gaze. Structure keeps things steady, he said. When his mom passed, everything else fell apart. This helps him feel like the world still makes sense. There was no self-pity in his tone, just simple truth. Dana felt her throat tighten. I didn't know, she said quietly.
He gave a small shrug. Most people don't ask.
She looked back at the calendar of notes. Each one was an act of care, small and ordinary, yet together they painted a picture more powerful than any report she'd ever written. The blue squares fluttered slightly in the draft from the open door like flags of quiet resilience. Caleb, she said after a pause, if the inspector asks about your setup downstairs, I'll make sure he understands what it's for. He frowned slightly. That's kind of you, but you don't have to bend the rules. Maybe not, she said, but sometimes rules forget why they exist. A soft knock at the open door made them both turn. Mrs. Green stood there, clutching a plate covered in foil. Her hands trembled a little. I made too many muffins, she said, her voice unsure. Thought Milo might like one. Milo peeked from behind the couch, eyes bright. Blueberry? Mrs. Green smiled, the only kind worth baking.
Caleb accepted the plate, his tone warm. Thank you, ma'am.
The old woman nodded, her eyes glassy. You saved my kitchen, she whispered, and probably me. Then she left as quietly as she came. Dana watched her go, feeling something shift again, the edges of the story blurring. The man people whispered about was building trust one small act at a time. When she finally turned back to him, Caleb was arranging 2 muffins on plates. One for him, he said, and one for whoever has to deal with all this paperwork. Dana laughed softly. That might be the kindest bribe I've ever received. He grinned, handing her the plate. Then take it, you look like someone who forgets breakfast.
She did, almost every day.
As she left his apartment, the scent of warm blueberries lingered on her hands. Outside, the morning rain had stopped and sunlight began to filter through the clouds. For the first time since the fire, Dana felt something close to peace. And yet, beneath it, a quiet tension waited. Because she knew that peace never lasted long in buildings where gossip traveled faster than truth. And somewhere down the hall, a neighbor was already dialing the owner's number, ready to report what they thought they'd seen. By mid-afternoon, the building inspector still hadn't shown up, but the tension had. Dana could feel it in the way people spoke softer when she passed, the way doors closed a second too quickly behind her. She tried to ignore it, focusing on her clipboard, on the work that always gave her control. But when her phone buzzed, the name on the screen froze her hand. Mr. Lawson, property owner.
She answered. This is Dana. His voice came sharp and dry, like paper tearing. I just got a call from a tenant. They said your janitor's running a machine shop in the basement. You told me you handled that.
He's not a janitor, sir. He's a tenant, and it's not a shop. I don't care what it is. I need a clean report before the insurance audit. You understand what's at stake? She did. A single flagged report could raise premiums, even cost her the job. Understood, she said quietly. Then fix it, Lawson snapped, and the line went dead. Dana stood for a long moment, staring at her reflection in the dark phone screen. Behind her, the rain-streaked window threw back a ghost of her face, composed, efficient, the kind of woman who didn't hesitate. But inside, something was cracking. She walked downstairs to the basement, the place now too familiar, too quiet. The metal frame still sat on the workbench, nearly finished. A soft hum of a power tool echoed faintly from the far corner. Caleb was there, tightening a small bolt, careful as always. When he looked up, the relief in his eyes faded at her expression. They called you, he said, reading it instantly. They called the owner, Dana replied. He wants this gone, today. Caleb put down the wrench slowly. Of course he does. Caleb, you know I can't... I know, he said, cutting her off gently. You have rules, and I have a son who still needs to breathe without a machine every night. His words weren't angry, but they landed hard. Dana stepped closer, lowering her voice. If the inspector marks this as a violation, he'll recommend termination of your lease. I'm trying to keep it off record, but you need to help me here. Caleb looked at the bike, then back at her. I can't throw this away. It's not a toy. It's how he keeps his lungs strong, how he learns not to give up. The silence between them thickened, filled with the quiet drip of water from a leaky pipe. Then another voice broke it, deep, steady, authoritative. "Everything all right down here?" They turned. A man in a dark jacket stood at the door, Fire Marshal Lee, badge visible on his chest. He held a clipboard and a calm, watchful gaze. "I was asked to review the fire report," he said. "Figured I'd stop by." Dana forced a steady tone. "Of course, Marshal, we appreciate your time." He walked around the basement slowly, noting the extinguisher mounted on the wall, the electrical outlets, the repaired wiring. "Looks better than most basements I've seen. Whoever handled that fire did it by the book." Caleb's hands were still, but his shoulders eased slightly.
Lee stopped beside the workbench. "That your project?"
"Yes, sir," Caleb said. "It's for my son's therapy." The marshal studied it for a moment, running a finger along the smooth welds. "You built this yourself?"
Caleb nodded.
Lee gave a small smile. "Looks solid. You'd be surprised how often I see people doing dangerous things with good intentions, but this is safe work, careful work."
Dana felt a strange warmth bloom in her chest.
For the first time in weeks, someone else saw what she'd been struggling to put into words. "I'll add a note to the report," Lee said, scribbling something down. "The fire was accidental, unrelated to this tenant's equipment, and whoever used the extinguisher prevented something worse." Caleb's voice was quiet. "Thank you." The marshal nodded. "You should be thanking yourself. Most people freeze. You didn't." When he left, the basement felt lighter. Dana leaned against the wall, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Caleb began packing his tools, careful not to meet her eyes. "You don't have to defend me," he said. "It'll just make things harder for you." "Maybe," she answered, straightening, "but some things are worth the trouble." He paused, then smiled faintly. "You're a rare kind of manager." "Don't tell the owner," she said, returning the smile. As Dana climbed the stairs, the hum of the building returned. The sound of pipes, the rattle of wind, the faint laughter of a child above. For the first time, she didn't hear noise, she heard life. And she realized that sometimes following the rulebook wasn't the same as doing what was right. By the time the sun began to fade, Dana's office felt smaller than usual, the blinds rattled softly in the evening breeze, and the smell of rain still lingered on her jacket. On her desk sat the fire marshal's report, clean, clear, and fair. It should have brought her relief. Instead, it felt like the calm before another storm. She didn't have to wait long. The knock came sharp against the door, followed by the voice she had been dreading. "Ms. Whitaker?" It was Mr. Lawson, the property owner, with two members of the board behind him. Their suits were dry, pressed, and out of place in this modest building. Dana stood up, forcing professionalism into her voice. "Good evening. I assume you saw the report?"
Lawson dropped a folder onto her desk.
"We did, and we also saw this." He flipped the folder open, revealing printed photos, shots of the basement, the workbench, the bike, even the drawing on the wall. Someone had taken them without permission. Dana's stomach sank. "Where did you get those?" "Anonymous tenant," Lawson said coldly. "Looks like you've been bending rules for a hobbyist mechanic. That's a liability nightmare." "It's not a hobby," Dana said firmly. "It's a therapy device for his son. The fire marshal cleared it." Lawson leaned forward. "The fire marshal doesn't pay our insurance premiums. You do as I say or we'll find someone who will." The words hit harder than she expected. For years, Dana had built her life around doing things the right way, the precise way, but now, standing between policy and conscience, she realized how fragile those definitions had become. "Mr. Lawson," she said carefully, "this man saved a tenant's life. He followed every safety step better than half the people in this building." "Doesn't matter," he snapped. "Perception is everything. The tenants are nervous, and nervous tenants move out. I want the basement cleared and his lease reviewed by the end of the week."
Dana met his eyes, steady but burning inside. "And if I don't?"
Lawson smirked. "Then I'll handle it myself." The meeting ended there, as most power plays do, one side leaving with control, the other with conviction. When the door shut behind them, Dana sat back down, staring at the photo of the bike. The blue sticky notes flashed in her memory, each one a reminder of care, of effort, of love written in small handwriting. Outside, thunder rolled again, soft but persistent. She looked out the window toward the parking lot and saw Caleb's car still there, the headlights dim, Milo's laughter faint through the rain. She stood. Whatever came next, she wasn't going to watch it happen from behind glass. A few minutes later, she found them under the covered walkway, the boy sitting cross-legged on the ground, tracing the lines of his bike frame with a small finger. Caleb looked up when she approached. "Evening, Ms. Whitaker. Everything all right?"
"No," she said honestly, they want you out."
He didn't seem surprised. "I figured. They think the bike's a hazard, that it scares people, that it makes me look incompetent." Caleb exhaled slowly, his eyes tired but kind. "You don't owe me anything, Dana." "Maybe I do," she said quietly. "Maybe I owe you the truth. You were right from the start, Rules don't always protect people, sometimes they just make us feel less guilty about not caring.
He studied her face for a moment as if deciding whether to believe her. Then he nodded once. So what happens now? I don't know yet, she said, but I'm not writing another report, not this time.
Milo looked up, confused but smiling. Does that mean we can stay? Dana knelt beside him, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you can, sweetheart. Caleb's voice softened. Thank you.
Don't thank me yet, she said.
Tomorrow morning, there's a board review. They'll want proof that you belong here. I need you to bring that bike, finished or not. He frowned. You want me to show them? I want them to see what I saw. That night, the lights in the basement burned later than ever. Dana stayed too, sorting through papers, calling contacts, and printing reports that might help. Every so often, she looked out the window and caught glimpses of Caleb through the glass, adjusting the handlebars, sanding the frame, wiping away the sweat from his forehead. When he finally stopped, long past midnight, the bike gleamed under the single bulb, steady, balanced, real. And for the first time since the fire, Dana felt something rare and fierce rise inside her. Not fear, not duty, but courage. The kind that comes when you stop waiting for permission to do what's right. Morning light washed through the windows of the community office, pale and cold. The room smelled faintly of coffee and damp carpet. Folding chairs lined the wall, and a long conference table waited in the center, stacked with papers and judgment. Caleb arrived quietly, pushing the small silver bike beside him. The handlebars gleamed under the fluorescent lights, clean and steady. Milo walked next to him, his helmet already on, clutching the seat with both hands as if afraid someone might take it away. Dana stood near the front, arms crossed, holding a folder that contained every document she thought might matter. Inspection logs, the fire marshal's report, even a few photos she had taken herself. She had spent the night rewriting every sentence, trying to balance truth with diplomacy. Now, as she watched father and son enter the room, she realized there was nothing left to polish, only the truth itself. Mr. Lawson and two board members sat across from her, their expressions tight, businesslike. Mr. Ruiz, Lawson began, thank you for coming. We understand you've been using the basement for personal projects that may violate building safety regulations. Caleb placed his hand on the bike. It's not a project, it's part of my son's therapy.
Lawson leaned back. Regardless of intent, unauthorized equipment, Dana interrupted before she could stop herself. Fire Marshal Lee verified that his setup is safe, and the fire last week had nothing to do with him. Lawson shot her a warning look. Ms. Whitaker, please, you're here to observe, not argue. She ignored him. If you'd seen what this bike means to that kid, you'd understand it's not about rules, it's about a father trying to keep his child healthy. One of the board members, a woman with kind eyes but a wary tone, looked at the bike. Is that true, Mr. Ruiz? It's medical? Caleb nodded. My son has chronic asthma. His doctor said gentle exercise helps build his lungs. I couldn't afford the adaptive bike they recommended, so I built this from spare parts. He paused, glancing at Milo. Every night we work on it together. Every morning he wakes up believing he's closer to riding it. The room fell quiet. Even Lawson hesitated before speaking. That's touching, but emotional appeals don't change liability. If another tenant reports discomfort or risk, they already did, Dana said sharply. And when the fire marshal reviewed their claims, he found nothing wrong. You can't punish someone for making your paperwork harder. Lawson's jaw tightened. You're out of line. Maybe, Dana said, but I'm not wrong. Milo's small voice broke the silence. Can I show them? Everyone turned toward him. Caleb started to say no, but Dana nodded gently. Go ahead, sweetheart. The boy pushed the bike forward, climbing onto the seat with his father's help. His feet barely reached the pedals. Caleb steadied him, one hand on the handlebar, the other on his shoulder. Just like we practiced, he whispered. Milo began to pedal slowly, the wheels turning smooth and steady. His breaths came light, measured, no trace of strain. When he made it to the other side of the room, he turned and grinned, a pure, bright smile that silenced everything else. Lawson cleared his throat. This isn't...
But the woman on the board lifted a hand. Let him finish. Milo pedaled back, wobbling once before Caleb steadied him. See, the boy said proudly. No smoke, no danger, just air. Dana felt the tightness in her chest finally give way. It wasn't a grand victory, just a small, undeniable truth made visible. Lawson rubbed his temple, exhaling. Fine, he said at last. We'll allow the basement use under supervision, but if there's one more complaint... There won't be, Dana said, her voice firm, because from now on, we'll make sure people understand what they're seeing before they judge it. As the meeting adjourned, Caleb knelt beside his son, fastening the strap on the helmet. You did good, he said softly.
Milo looked up. Did we get to stay?
Caleb smiled, eyes wet. Yeah, buddy. We get to stay.
Dana watched them pack the bike, the small frame catching the light like something sacred. When Caleb turned to her, there were no words, just a quiet nod, gratitude shared without sound. For once, Dana didn't feel like a manager holding a clipboard. She felt like someone who had finally seen what mattered and stood up for it. Outside, the clouds were breaking apart, sunlight spilling across the parking lot. It was the first clear day in weeks. And in that stillness, as father and son walked toward their car, Dana knew this wasn't the end of a problem. It was the beginning of a change, the kind that starts in small rooms with small voices and grows stronger each time someone dares to listen. The next Saturday arrived quiet and golden, the kind of morning when everything felt clean again after days of rain. Maple Court's courtyard shimmered with puddles that caught bits of sunlight. A few neighbors stood near their doors, pretending not to watch, but clearly curious. Word had spread about the meeting, and about the boy who'd turned a rulebook into a reason to hope. Dana came early, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee and a clipboard she didn't plan to use. Caleb was already outside, adjusting the small silver bike under the awning. Milo crouched beside him, fastening his helmet, his excitement buzzing in every small movement. "Morning," Dana said, handing Caleb a cup. He smiled, tired but lighter than she'd ever seen him. "You didn't have to come." "Maybe not," she replied, "but I wanted to see him ride." Milo looked up, grinning. "You'll clap, right?" Dana laughed softly, loud enough to scare the birds. The boy giggled and climbed onto the seat. Caleb steadied the handlebar. "You remember the turns," he said, his tone gentle but sure. "Small circles, breathe easy." "I know, Dad," Milo said, though his hands shook slightly. Dana felt her heart climb into her throat. The first push was awkward, the wheels slipping once on the damp brick, but then balance. The pedals turned, smooth and deliberate. Milo's laughter rose through the courtyard, sharp and pure, the kind of sound that makes people forget what they were doing. Neighbors stepped out one by one, Mrs. Green holding a tray of cookies, the man from apartment 4 with his coffee, even the 2 tenants who once complained. They watched as Milo made another loop, then another, sunlight catching on his helmet like a crown. Caleb walked behind him, close enough to catch him if he fell, but far enough to let him feel free. When Milo stopped to rest, his chest heaving, the small crowd clapped, tentative at first, then louder. Dana felt tears sting her eyes before she could stop them. She blinked fast, pretending to check something on her phone. Mrs. Green stepped forward, handing Milo a cookie. "You're faster than the mail truck, sweetheart." Milo grinned through crumbs. "Not yet, but maybe next time." Caleb crouched beside him, adjusting the chain, voice low but full of pride. "You did it. All on your own." Milo shook his head. "No, you built it. She fixed the rules." He pointed at Dana. The crowd laughed softly, and for once no one corrected him. The sound of small talk filled the courtyard again, the kind that carried warmth instead of worry. Someone offered to help repaint the benches. Another neighbor mentioned adding lights near the walkway. For the first time, it didn't feel like a building full of strangers, it felt like a community waking up. Caleb stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Looks like you started something, Miss Whitaker." "Don't blame me," Dana said, smiling. "Blame the kid who reminded everyone what courage looks like." He glanced at Milo, now showing off his bike to a group of kids. "He learned that from his mom," he said quietly. "She used to say courage isn't the absence of fear. It's what you do while you're still scared." Dana nodded slowly. "Then she'd be proud of both of you." They stood there a while, just watching. The afternoon breeze rustled the leaves, carrying bits of laughter up to the balconies. It felt fragile, this peace, but real. As the sun dipped lower, Milo made one last lap and stopped in front of them. "Can we ride again tomorrow?" he asked, his voice small but hopeful. Caleb smiled. "We'll ride every day the weather lets us." Milo looked up at Dana. You'll come too?" She hesitated, then said, "I will, if you promise to teach me how to steer." The boy giggled, nodding eagerly. "Deal." And as they all laughed, Dana realized how simple the moment was. No board meetings, no rules, no reports, just 3 people standing in the golden light, learning how to trust the ground beneath them again. For the first time in years, she wasn't managing a building, she was part of one. And she couldn't help but think that maybe this was what safety really looked like. Not rules, not fear, but the quiet steadiness of people who finally saw each other for who they truly were. A week later, the courtyard at Maple Court no longer looked the same. The benches had been repainted. A new sign hung beside the basement door, "Community Workshop, Residents Welcome." And on Saturday mornings, you could hear the faint whir of tools mixed with laughter echoing up the stairwell.
Dana stood by the window of her office, coffee in hand, watching as Caleb adjusted the height of Milo's bike. The boy waited patiently, helmet slightly crooked, feet tapping against the concrete in rhythm. Beside them, Mrs. Green set down a tray of muffins and two neighbors carried boxes of donated tools. It was simple, almost ordinary, yet everything about it felt like a quiet miracle. She set down her coffee and walked outside. The air smelled faintly of rain and fresh paint. "Morning, everyone," she said, her voice lighter than it had been in months.
Milo waved. "Ms. Whittaker, you missed the first ride." She smiled. "Then I guess I'll have to watch the second."
Caleb looked up from tightening a bolt. "We were just about to start. You came at the right time."
Dana crouched beside Milo. "You ready?"
The boy grinned, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Always." With a gentle push, the wheels began to turn. Milo pedaled forward, steady now, confident. The neighbors clapped again, though this time it wasn't about the bike. It was about the feeling that something had shifted, something bigger than steel and rubber. When Milo stopped, Caleb knelt to hug him. "Proud of you, buddy," he whispered. "I know," Milo said, smiling into his father's shoulder. "You tell me every time." Dana felt the warmth of the scene wrap around her like sunlight. She had spent years enforcing rules meant to keep people safe, but now she understood real safety didn't live in paperwork or policies. It lived in the way people showed up for one another. Caleb stood, brushing his hands off. "You know," he said softly, "when I first moved here, I thought this place was just a roof, but turns out it's got a heartbeat." Dana looked around at the small crowd, at the laughter floating between apartments, at the boy who had turned caution into courage. "Maybe it always did," she said. "We just had to listen long enough to hear it." A moment passed in comfortable silence, then Milo tugged her sleeve. "Ms. Whittaker, can I tell you something?" "Of course," she said. He leaned closer, whispering like it was a secret. "When I ride now, it doesn't feel like I'm trying to get stronger, it just feels like I'm free." Dana swallowed the lump in her throat. "That's exactly how it should feel." Caleb smiled at her, eyes soft with gratitude. "Thank you for everything." She shook her head. "Don't thank me. You built this. All I did was make room for it." He thought for a moment, then said, "Sometimes making room is the hardest part." The afternoon light slanted across the courtyard, painting long gold lines on the ground. Dana watched as Milo started another lap, the bike catching flashes of sunlight with each turn. The sound of his laughter blended with the murmur of the neighbors, the distant hum of life continuing. And in that still, ordinary moment, Dana realized the truth she'd been chasing for years. Leadership wasn't about control, it was about care. About building something that could stand on its own when you finally stepped back. She looked at Caleb, at Milo, at the place that had once been just another address on a list. Now it felt like something worth protecting. Not because the rules said so, but because love had built it that way. As the sun began to set, Dana turned toward the camera of her mind, the quiet voice inside her steady and sure. Sometimes the greatest repairs aren't made to buildings or machines, they're made to hearts, one small act at a time. She smiled, watching the boy ride into the light. "Tell me," she said softly, almost to herself, "do you believe that seeing each other is the real kind of safety?" And with that, she turned back toward the building. Ready to keep listening, ready to keep making room. See you in the next story, right here at Inspire Fathers Who.